prison, a 4-meter alien warrior in heat, and me, the only human close enough to touch her. The emergency lights pulsed red every 10 seconds, rhythmic, like a warning heartbeat echoing through the bowels of the ship. It was hot, too hot. The air felt heavier with every breath, thick with recycled sweat and engine fumes. Metal walls, scuffed and scorched, creaked under the shifting weight of a crippled vessel. Somewhere above, the Nova Reach had stopped responding. Below, the security deck was dying. Sergeant Jason Cole leaned against the back corner of cell 17A, breathing slowly, trying to conserve oxygen. His uniform was torn at the shoulder, dried blood smeared across his forearm. Whatever hit them during the inspection run, it had come fast. Pirates, probably. Or worse. He remembered the alarms, the weapon's fire, the sudden breach in gravity. Then blackout. Now he was here. And so was she. The cell wasn't a cell anymore. The energy barrier that once separated the two holding units had glitched badly. Sparks still crackled faintly where the emitter node had melted. The AI had rerouted power to medbay life support, leaving the lower deck cells on passive lockdown. A move meant to save lives. Instead, it trapped him with something far from safe. She stood across from him, calm and silent, like a living statue carved from ocean stone. She was at least 4 meters tall, easily twice his height. Her skin was a lustrous cobalt blue that reflected the flickering red light in deep violet undertones. Her muscles, visible even under the segmented black armor she wore, moved with the precision of a predator. Her eyes were oversized, with elliptical pupils and glowing amethyst irises that tracked his every movement. Her hair, thick, black, braided, was tied back loosely, strands falling like ink across her sharp cheekbones. Beautiful, in a way that unsettled something deep inside him. Too perfect, too alien. He remembered her designation from the crew logs. THX 7A, species, Thoraxi, female. The report had been clear. Violent, unpredictable during hormonal surges. Keep isolated. Absolutely no physical contact during rut phase. Jason swallowed. Hard. Okay, he whispered to himself. Let's just keep breathing and wait for extraction. Someone's coming. They have to be. The alien moved. Not much. Just a shift of her weight, the subtle twitch of fingers flexing near her side. But it was enough to make his instinct scream. Not because she looked aggressive, but because she didn't. She looked ready. Jason stood slowly, keeping his hands visible. You understand me? There was a pause. Then she tilted her head, and the words came. Yes. Crude dialect, but I comprehend. Her voice was layered, musical, like 2 notes sung together in harmony, but low and firm, like someone who didn't ask twice. Jason blinked. You learned English? Your broadcasts. Audio logs. I absorbed the syntax while waiting. He tried not to flinch at while waiting. What are you waiting for? Her eyes narrowed, not angrily, calculating. You. Jason felt his throat tighten. I think there's a mistake. I'm not part of this. I'm just cargo inspection. Wrong place, wrong time. She stepped forward, one bare foot echoing against the steel floor. The cell wasn't big, maybe 10 feet by 15. It felt smaller now. Her eyes scanned him with clinical interest. You were male, mature, fertile, oxygen tolerant, compatible. Jason backed up until his shoulders hit the far wall. Hold on. Compatible for what? She exhaled, a strange, vibrating sound, almost like a purr mixed with frustration. My cycle has begun. Isolation is unnatural. It affects judgment. Instinct chooses proximity. You are within range. There was no threat in her tone, but there didn't need to be. Listen, I'm sorry you're stuck here too, but I'm not a volunteer for whatever Thoraxi mating ritual you're about to go through, okay? Another step. She was close enough now that he could feel the heat radiating off her skin. It wasn't just her body temperature. Her presence was overwhelming. She smelled like ozone and crushed herbs, like wildness and summer storms. Not human, not even close. I do not intend to harm, she said, and something in her voice changed. Softer now, almost apologetic. But if I do not bond during cycle onset, neural destabilization begins. I become volatile, dangerous. To you, to myself. Jason frowned. Bond? You mean like permanently. To anchor instinct. To stabilize surge. Yes. She paused. Temporary bonding is acceptable if compatibility is uncertain. Temporary bonding. The words didn't ease his nerves. The ship groaned again. Metal twisted somewhere, down the corridor. Emergency power was barely holding. And nobody was coming. Jason's training kicked in. He scanned the room again, looking for anything he could use. A pipe, a broken panel, even a loose wire. But there was nothing. Nothing except her. And those violet eyes locked on him, like he was both problem and solution. "What's your name?" he asked, stalling. Her head tilted. "Name? Yeah. What do they call you?" "I am Phyrexia," she said, voice firm again. "Daughter of the third spire. Champion of the Iron Moons." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Okay, Phyrexia. I'm Jason, son of nobody special. Maintenance crew." Her gaze softened. "Jason." He hated how good it sounded when she said it. Then the lights flickered, and the last of the containment field collapsed with a sharp fizzle of ozone. No more barrier. Just air. Just breath. Just them. Jason took one involuntary step toward her. Was it curiosity? Panic? Something in between? Phyrexia stood still, her body humming with restrained tension. She was breathing faster now. Her skin shimmered with a deeper shade of blue. She was struggling. "You should move," she said, "if you plan to run." Jason stared at the door. Still locked. Dead panel. No power. He looked back at her. "I don't think I'm getting very far." Silence stretched between them. Then stay," Phyrexia whispered. Jason's instinct screamed at him to stay alert, to keep moving, to find a way out. But every part of him also knew that nothing he could do, no punch, no trick, would stop a warrior like Phyrexia if she decided to act. She wasn't just stronger than him. She was built for war. Engineered, maybe. Bred, definitely. The Thoraxi were a species born in conflict. And now he was locked in a dying ship, breathing recycled heat, stuck in a box with one of them entering the most volatile phase of her biology. She paced slowly, as if caged, as if holding herself back. Jason noticed the tremor in her fingers, the twitch in her jaw, the way her gaze darted to him every few seconds, then lingered. This wasn't just arousal. It was compulsion, biology overriding logic. And for all her warrior discipline, she was losing the battle. "How long does this cycle of yours last?" he asked, voice tight. Phyrexia didn't stop pacing. "I'm bonded. Between 30 and 40 hours. Full surge begins in 2. And what happens during surge?" She stopped, looked at him directly. "If I am in bonded at full onset, my body breaks. Heat becomes agony. Instinct becomes rage. We kill ourselves, or we kill anything that moves." Jason stared at her, heart thudding in his ears. "That's not an option." "No," she agreed. "It is not." There was a silence then, long, heavy, pulsing with heat and tension. Jason leaned back against the wall and tried to think. He needed air, space, time, but all of those were running out. She wasn't threatening him. Not exactly. But the danger was there, in the subtext of her every word. It wasn't personal. It was primal, and that made it worse. He looked around the cell again. No vents, no override panels, just scorched bulkhead and flickering light. No weapons, no tools, no exit. "Why would they lock you in with me?" he muttered. "They didn't," Phyrexia said. "Containment failed. The ship prioritized medical units over security. So I'm a glitch." "No," she corrected softly. "You are an answer." Jason hated how that made something in him stir. The situation was insane, absolutely beyond reason, but his body didn't seem to care. She was impossibly beautiful, powerful, and there was something raw in the way she looked at him. Not lust. Not exactly. Something deeper. Need, laced with restraint. "Back home," Jason said slowly, "this kind of thing would be illegal. Dangerous. We have rules about consent." Phyrexia stepped toward him, deliberate, slow. Her eyes didn't break contact. "You misunderstand. I'm not taking you. I am asking." He froze. "You're asking me to bond?" "Yes. Temporarily. Physically. It will regulate the surge. You will survive. I will stabilize." Jason ran a hand down his face. "This has to be the worst first date in the galaxy." She tilted her head. "What is date?" He almost laughed. It came out bitter. Phyrexia sat then, cross-legged, just a few feet away from him. It was strange seeing someone her size fold herself so gracefully. She rested her elbows on her knees and simply watched him. "Why haven't you attacked me?" he asked. "I was taught control. Bonding without choice is violation. I would rather perish." That stopped him cold. "You're serious?" "Yes." Jason exhaled. "I didn't expect that from someone who could throw me through a wall. You think strength defines morality? I think desperation usually destroys it." Phyrexia didn't respond immediately. Then she said, "The first time I entered Cycle, I was restrained, studied. They wanted to see how long a Thoraxi could last in bonded. I lasted 32 hours. Then I killed 3 of them before they released the gas." Jason stared. "What happened after?" "They call me a weapon," she said, tone flat. "And they locked me in a stasis cell for 4 years." Jason's gut twisted. The Thoraxi weren't allies. They were property. Experimental assets held by whatever black site facility the Nova Reach was orbiting. He wasn't supposed to know any of that. But now is all real. "So I'm not the first," he said. "You were the first they left alone. The first I could speak to. The first who sees me not as a threat, but as a being." Jason looked away. Her words had weight. Not just heat or tension. Pain. Memory. Humanity. Even if she wasn't human. A sharp whine echoed through the ship's frame. Another power node dying. The lights dimmed further. Only one panel still pulsed now, and it wouldn't last long. Jason knew what was coming. He knew what she'd become if the surge hit full. And something inside him, a part he usually kept locked down, began to weigh the options. "How do Thoraxi choose a mate?" he asked. Phyrexia blinked, surprised. "By scent, by neural compatibility, by blood signals. Not exactly flowers and a dinner invitation." "No," she paused. "But not violence, either. We test strength. We mark. We join." Jason nodded slowly. "And what happens if I say yes?" She stood. "Then I will not lose myself. You will not die. We survive." The heat in the room seemed thicker now, the distance between them smaller. Jason's heart pounded, not just from fear, but from adrenaline, anticipation, confusion. He was a technician, a soldier, a nobody, and somehow he was now the single point of contact between a volatile alien warrior and her own destruction. Maybe this wasn't about desire. Maybe it was about compassion, about mercy, or maybe, just maybe, it was about something rarer. 2 people who were never supposed to meet, finding a way through chaos together. But he wasn't ready. Not yet. He looked her in the eyes and said, "Then give me 1 hour. Let me think. Let me understand." Phyrexia didn't move for a long moment. Then she nodded. 1 hour. The hour passed like a knife dragged slowly across the skin of time. Jason had never felt more helpless, trapped between duty, fear, and something that, disturbingly, resembled empathy. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this cell. Not part of any experiment. Not a solution to someone else's biological emergency. But Phyrexia's words kept echoing in his mind. "If I do not bond, I break." She sat in the corner now, breathing heavily. Her arms were wrapped around her knees, but her posture wasn't defensive anymore. It was strained. Every minute her control slipped further. A sheen of sweat, or whatever passed for it in Thoraxi physiology, glimmered on her skin. Her eyes glowed brighter now, flickering, unstable. Jason checked the flickering emergency panel. No updates. No signals. The comms were still dead. Either nobody knew he was down here, or nobody cared. He crouched near her, keeping a cautious distance. How much longer? Phyrexia didn't look at him when she spoke. 32 minutes until full onset. "I feel inside. It burns." Jason rubbed the back of his neck. His body was reacting in ways he wasn't proud of. Adrenaline did strange things when mixed with fear and attraction. She was stunning, yes, but this wasn't about sex. This was survival, and consent, and consequence. "I'm still here," he said quietly. That made her turn. Her eyes locked onto his. There was no aggression, only clarity and pain. "You should not be." "I'm starting to agree," he muttered, trying to smile, but it didn't land. Suddenly, her hand clenched the metal grating beneath her with enough force to bend it. She let out a low growl, not at him, but at herself. Restraint was cracking. Jason backed up. "Okay, what do I do if you lose it?" Phyrexia gritted her teeth. Kill me before I kill you. Not really the instruction manual I was hoping for. She rose to her feet in one slow, control motion. Every line of her body vibrated with tension. Her muscles flexed unconsciously, like she was fighting her own limbs. Jason noticed the way her chest heaved, the slight shudder in her shoulders. She was in agony. I won't let it happen, she said. But if it does, I want you to know, I was never meant to be a weapon. I never wanted this. Jason stared up at her. Then what did you want? She looked at him like she was seeing a ghost. To be something more than what they built me to be. And then it happened. The lights cut out completely. Darkness swallowed the cell. Total, suffocating. The silence deepened, broken only by the sound of two people breathing in sync, but for opposite reasons. Jason reached instinctively for his utility light, flicked it on. Dim beam, barely a cone, but enough to see her. She wasn't standing anymore. She was moving. Fast. She slammed against the far wall, fists driving into the bulkhead, screaming into the metal like a caged animal. Jason's heart leapt into his throat. Sparks flew as the wall cracked, paneling dented inward. She dropped to her knees, panting, holding her own head like it might split open. Jason's voice cracked. Phyrexia. She didn't respond, just writhed. He ran to her, knelt beside her, not thinking now, just reacting. His hand touched her arm. Her skin was burning, pulses of heat rippling under the surface. Her breath came in short, broken snarls. Her eyes were glowing so brightly now they were almost blinding. Talk to me, he shouted. I can't. Jason, I can't. She shoved him hard, not out of anger, but reflex. He flew back, hit the floor with a grunt. But she didn't follow. She stayed curled, fists pounding the ground now. Jason crawled to her again, slower this time. He put his hand on her back. This time, she didn't shove him away. Instead, she shuddered and leaned into the contact. Touch grounds me, she whispered. It helps. Jason swallowed hard. Then I'm staying right here. She let out a trembling exhale, like someone who had been underwater too long. Her body relaxed, but only slightly. Her head dropped onto his shoulder, breath hot against his skin. It was like hugging a furnace, but her muscles were easing. Her heartbeat slowed. Jason sat still, unsure what the hell he was doing, but knowing it mattered. He wasn't bonding. Not yet. But he was choosing to be with her in this moment, to hold back the storm. Minutes passed. Maybe 10. Maybe 20. He lost count. Then a sound. Metallic. External. Jason's head snapped up. A soft hiss echoed outside the sealed chamber. Airlock systems. Something was moving. He froze. Phyrexia didn't look up. She whispered, "They're coming." Who? They'll want to extract the asset. Jason felt dread settle in his stomach. You mean you? She nodded weakly. If I'm unstable, they'll neutralize me. Reset the specimen. Start again. Reset. Like she was just a program. A malfunctioning weapon. Not a person. Jason stood carefully. He grabbed a broken pipe from the floor. Useless against her, but maybe not useless against them. He turned to her. Can you move? Yes, but I won't last much longer. A voice crackled on the intercom. Distorted, emotionless. Specimen T checks. 7A detected and fail containment. Protocol override 9 to 7 initiated. Lethal suppression authorized. Jason's heart dropped. They weren't coming to help. They were coming to terminate. He looked at her again. This creature in pain, trying to hold on to herself, despite everything. And for the first time, his fear fully flipped. It wasn't her he was afraid of anymore. It was them. The automated voice kept repeating. Lethal suppression authorized. Please evacuate the red zone. Jason could hear the magnetic clamps unlocking across the deck. Sliding metal. A mechanical exhale. They were sending drones. Maybe soldiers. He didn't know. What he did know was this. They weren't coming to rescue him. They were coming to erase her. Phyrexia leaned against the wall, barely upright. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Her skin darker now, glistening with heat sweat. Her glowing eyes dimmed between blinks. She was holding on, but barely. Jason looked at the broken energy panel by the door. Its circuits were fried, but the backup port blinked, still functional. If he could reroute the panel, maybe he could lock the deck doors. By time, it would mean exposing himself, risking contact But he was out of choices. "Stay down," he said. She looked at him, and something in her face cracked. Fear. Real fear. Not for herself. "You'll be marked as hostile," she said. "They won't hesitate." Jason grabbed a nearby data spike, yanked the casing off the port. "They already see me as expendable. I'm not just going to sit here and watch them put a bullet in your head." He knelt beside the panel and started pulling wires. His fingers moved fast, years of mechanical reflex kicking in. Phyrexia's eyes followed him, half focused, half fading. He could feel the heat coming off her like a furnace behind him. "Why?" she asked, voice almost inaudible. Jason kept working. "Because you're not what they say you are." Sparks jumped from a port. He jammed the spike in. Somewhere down the corridor, the doors hissed and clanked. Lock override triggered. Red emergency lights began to spin in reverse. He bought maybe 60 seconds. Then the first drone dropped. It slid down the ceiling track with a whir, deploying a mounted arc rifle. Its scope lit red. Jason dove sideways as the beam fired, scorching the floor where he'd stood. "Jason!" Phyrexia roared, and she was up. He barely saw her move. 1 second she was behind him. The next she was leaping off the wall and smashing into the drone midair. The arc rifle shattered under her fist. Sparks exploded. The drone spiraled, collided with the far wall, and burst into flame. She dropped to one knee, panting. Her chest heaved, shoulders trembling, but her eyes burned bright again. Jason rushed to her. "You good?" "No," she said through clenched teeth, "but I'm not done." More footsteps. Not drones this time. Real boots. Soldiers. Phyrexia stood fully now, towering over Jason. "They brought live units." "Of course they did," he muttered. "I make one friend, and now the whole ship wants us dead." She turned to him. "There is another way out." "What?" "Maintenance shaft. Behind the rear panel. But it's narrow. Only you fit. No way I'm leaving you here." Her jaw tensed. "If I lose control in that tunnel." "Then we don't go through the tunnel," he snapped. "We find another way together." "Jason, listen to me." "No, I've listened enough. I've watched enough. All my life I stayed out of conflict, out of people's business. But I'm not walking away from you." Another drone appeared behind the soldiers. Larger, cannon-mounted. Phyrexia turned to face them. Jason stepped beside her. She looked down at him. Her body shook, her heat rolling off in waves. But her voice was steady now. "Then we fight." The corridor lit up with gunfire. Jason grabbed a metal bar and swung blindly as one soldier rushed forward. Phyrexia moved like a blur, intercepting another attacker midair. Her roar rattled the walls as she tore through armor and steel. They weren't prepared. Not for her. Not for the fury of a Thoraxi warrior fighting to survive. But she wasn't fighting alone anymore. Jason ducked, countered, dragged a down drone toward the exit to block the path. Phyrexia followed, bleeding light from a wound in her side. But she kept moving. They reached the door. Jason slammed the manual override, and the hatch slammed shut behind them. Silence. Only their breathing. Jason turned to her. "You still with me?" "I am," she whispered. "You are strong. Not by size. By choice." He laughed weakly. "I think that was the dumbest thing I've ever done." "It was not dumb," she said. "It was human." They were in a backup access tunnel now. Low ceiling, tight metal walls. A faint glow from the emergency strip lighting guided them. The sound of distant boots faded as they crawled deeper into the belly of the ship. Finally, they stopped, somewhere near the engine crawl space. Jason collapsed against the wall, soaked in sweat. Phyrexia sat across from him, her body still trembling. But the violent twitching had slowed. "You bought me time," she said. "I bought us time," Jason corrected. "We're not done yet." Then she leaned forward. Slow, gentle, careful. Her massive hands cupped his face, and her thumb brushed his cheek. It wasn't lust. It wasn't pressure. It was gratitude, raw and unspoken. "You could have run," she said. He met her gaze. "I didn't want to." Another silence. Then she whispered, "Jason, the bonding. It doesn't have to mean what it means to them. It can mean something else. A choice. A connection." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he placed his hand over hers. Warmth met warmth. And for the first time, the fire between them didn't feel dangerous. It felt alive. If you've ever rooted for an impossible love, won the world, tried to crush. Subscribe to the channel. There's so much more coming, and you don't want to miss it. The hum of the backup ventilation system filled the narrow maintenance shaft, barely louder than the blood in Jason's ears. Every breath he took burned like fire. Every limb screamed from overuse. But they were alive. He glanced across the small crawl space at Threxia. She sat with her back against the wall, head bowed, her thick black braids tangled over her shoulders. Blood, hers, still oozed faintly from the gash along her ribs. The glow of her skin had dulled slightly, but the heat in the air hadn't gone down. She hadn't spoken since they escaped. Not a word. Her silence wasn't cold. It was heavy, like she was carrying something massive and afraid it might fall if she moved. Jason sat up, groaning softly. "You still with me?" She looked up. "Yes." Her voice was rough, fractured, even, but steady. "You're hurt. I've endured worse." A pause. "But the surge, it's changing." Jason blinked. "Changing how?" "It's not rising anymore. It's holding." She tilted her head, studying him. "You're grounding me, even without full contact." He flushed slightly. "Yeah, well, guess I'm good at being a human lightning rod." Threxia actually smiled at that. It was small but real. The first real sign that the storm inside her might actually be breaking. But the silence returned quickly. Not awkward, just full of weight. Jason cleared his throat. "Back there, you fought for me." "I fought with you," she corrected. "It's different." He gave her a sideways glance. "Ow. One is survival. The other is loyalty." Jason looked down at his hands. "You think loyalty grows that fast?" "In war, yes. When blood is spilled side by side, things grow fast. Roots in scorched earth are often the strongest." He nodded slowly. That made sense in a brutal, battlefield kind of way. And what they just lived through wasn't far off from war. He noticed her breathing was slower now. Her body, still massive and alien and intimidating, had relaxed just slightly. The edges of her sharpness had dulled, like a sword cooling after being pulled from flame. Jason moved closer. "You said you were bred to be a weapon. Did you ever believe that?" She didn't answer right away. "Then, at first, they taught us that bonding made us weak. That desire was distraction. They isolated us, broke us, controlled the cycles, told us we were safer alone." Jason swallowed. "And now?" Her eyes met his. "Now I think they were afraid of what would happen if we chose our own bonds." Another silence. Jason leaned back, closed his eyes for a moment. The pain in his body was catching up. He could still hear the echoes of boots, the hiss of drones, the crackle of gunfire. But what haunted him more than any of that was the memory of her, screaming, shattering, barely holding on, and still choosing not to hurt him. He opened his eyes. "I think we're out of immediate danger. For now." Threxia nodded. "They will regroup. They always do. Then we need a plan." She gestured at the narrow space around them. "This shaft leads to the engine room. If we can reroute the primary fuel line, we can force a pulse shutdown. That will lock the deck systems and trigger emergency evac protocol." Jason raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" She gave him a look. "I built ships like this, long before I was captured." That caught him off guard. "You were an engineer?" "I was many things." He smiled faintly. "I like that." Then his smile faded. "What happens after we get out?" Her expression didn't change. "They'll try to reclaim me. Reset me." Jason's fists clenched. "Not if I have anything to say about it." She tilted her head. "Why would you risk everything for me?" He didn't answer at first, because the truth was still forming in his chest, beating louder with every second he spent next to her. It wasn't just pity. It wasn't lust. It wasn't even debt. It was connection. "I don't know how to explain it," he said finally. "But you're not just an experiment. You're a person. You saved me. You chose to control yourself when you could have ended me. That matters." She looked at him like she was seeing something she'd never seen before. "You speak like no human I have known." "Well," Jason said, "most of us aren't locked in cells with alien warriors in heat." Another smile. This time, she laughed, short, low, but genuine. Her laugh echoed through the crawl space like something sacred. It made the metal walls feel a little less like a prison. "I like your voice," she said suddenly. Jason blinked. "You what?" "Your voice. It calms the fire." Jason's cheeks flushed again. He wasn't used to being called calming, especially not by a 7-foot, blue-skinned combat goddess with glowing eyes and a body temperature that could boil water. Well, he said awkwardly, stick around. There's plenty more where that came from. Her gaze softened. Jason stood slowly, wincing at the ache in his back. Let's get to the engine room. Finish this before they reboot the suppression systems. She nodded and followed, her movements more stable now. Still powerful, still intimidating, but no longer unbalanced. As they crawled forward through the shaft, Jason couldn't shake the feeling in his chest, like a cord had been tied between them. Fragile, yes, but real, and growing stronger. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. They still had to fight their way out of this hellhole. Still had to deal with the people who thought they could decide what Phyrexia was worth. But Jason had already made his decision. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was choosing her. The engine room was darker than expected. Phyrexia scanned the space quickly, her eyes adapting faster than Jason's. The room was a mess. Coolant pooled on the floor. Scorched panels sparked intermittently, and a thick haze of vapor clung to the ceiling. The damage from the earlier attack had reached further than either of them thought. Jason moved cautiously, flashlight sweeping across the control console. We might be able to reroute fuel flow through the auxiliary line. Trigger core lockdown. Phyrexia crouched beside a ruptured coolant pipe and touched the edge of the metal with her fingers. Her hands moved with precision. This wasn't improvisation. This was memory. Skill. You weren't lying, he said softly. You really were an engineer. She nodded without looking up. On the Thoraxi vessel Orankai, I was second systems chief. Before everything changed, Jason leaned against the console. What happened? Phyrexia paused. Then, with quiet certainty, we answered a distress signal. It was a trap. I was taken. The others did not survive. He didn't say anything. What was there to say? Sorry didn't cut it. Rage wouldn't fix it. So he just stood there, bearing witness, letting silence carry the weight of truth. She looked at him. You think of me as a weapon, but I was a builder before I was a fighter. I don't think of you as a weapon at all, Jason said. Not anymore. Her gaze held his for a long moment. No barriers, no tension, just mutual awareness of pain, of survival, of something trying to bloom between the cracks. He moved closer. You've been alone in this for a long time. Her voice was barely a whisper. Always. Jason reached out slowly, deliberately. His hand rested lightly on hers. Her skin was warm, not burning like before. Calmer now. Steady. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Phyrexia stared at their hands. Then she turned hers, palm up, and interlocked her massive fingers gently with his. The gesture was alien and human at the same time. Why are you doing this? She asked. You owe me nothing. Don't need a reason to care, he replied. But if I had one, I think I just don't want you to forget what it feels like to be treated like a person. She closed her eyes for a moment. The surge has stopped. Jason blinked. Seriously, it faded 2 hours ago. The connection, your presence, it stabilized me. Without physical bonding. Jason gave a low whistle. So, all that tension, all that danger. And you're telling me the solution was human stubbornness? And compassion, she added. That's rarer than strength in most species. They work side by side in silence, repairing conduits, bypassing blown systems, and reactivating the fuel pump circuit. Phyrexia's hands moved with fluid certainty. Jason followed her instructions, surprised by how naturally they coordinated. No friction, no power struggle, just partnership. As they reached the final bypass, Jason asked, what happens if we pull this off? Ship goes in a forced shutdown, escape pods eject, and we go where? Phyrexia didn't answer immediately. Then, I have coordinates. A relay in neutral space. I know someone who could help us disappear. Jason raised an eyebrow. You've had a backup plan this whole time. No, I had a last resort. You've made it something more. He looked at her. Really looked. There was no heat behind her eyes now. No tension. Just clarity. And a quiet, growing pull he couldn't ignore. You said something back in the shaft, he said. That bonding doesn't have to mean what they think it means. That can be choice. A connection. She turned to him, voice steady. Yes. He hesitated. So if I said I wasn't ready for that? Not yet. But that I still want to stay with you, to help you find freedom, what would you say? Phyrexia stepped closer. I would say that's the most Thoraxi thing you could offer. Jason laughed, genuinely this time. They activated the pulse switch together. A deep hum filled the room, followed by a mechanical tremor that rippled through the walls. Red lights flashed in sequence. Emergency lockdown initiated. Phyrexia turned to him. We have 15 minutes before pod ejection. The bay is 3 levels up. They ran. Through smoke-filled corridors, past fallen drones and disabled soldiers. The chaos hadn't reached this part of the ship yet. Most of the crew had evacuated or were chasing shadows below. When they reached the launch deck, Jason stopped at the edge of the open bay. There were 2 pods left. One large enough for Phyrexia. One just barely big enough for him. He turned to her. We make it out of here, what then? She stepped beside him. We don't know the galaxy answers. Just each other. He nodded. And for the first time since this all began, he felt something like peace. They climbed into their pods. Linked by comms, synced by code. But bound by something far stronger. Not biology. Not instinct. Choice. The launch sequence had begun. Jason's pod shook violently as the magnetic clamps disengaged. Through the viewport, he saw the inside of the docking bay begin to collapse. The emergency pressure seals weren't holding. Somewhere behind the roar of fire suppression systems and klaxons, he could hear the tearing groan of steel as the Nova Reach started coming apart. System override complete, said the onboard voice. Emergency ejection in T-minus 30 seconds. Phyrexia, Jason said into the comms. Are you still with me? Static. His stomach tightened. Phyrexia, answer me. Then her voice came, distorted, strained. I'm here. Trouble. Jason's fingers flew across the manual override on his pod. The countdown was still active, but something in him knew without logic or reason, that something had gone wrong. Malfunction in Pod 17B. Ejection failure. Internal lock engaged. His blood went cold. Phyrexia. She didn't respond. Jason punched the override again. Nothing. He stared at the console. He could eject and save himself. Or he ripped the harness off and slammed the hatch open. The oxygen sucked back with a deafening roar. The deck was a hurricane of fire, smoke, and strobing red light. He leapt from his pod, stumbled onto the collapsing platform, and ran. Her pod was jammed halfway into the wall. A blast panel had fallen during the shockwave and crushed the right side. Sparks flew as damaged hydraulics pumped uselessly. Jason scrambled across the floor, grabbed the edge of the pod, and forced it open. Inside, Phyrexia was slumped forward, one arm pinned under the paneling. Blood streamed from her shoulder, and her breathing was erratic, shallow, mechanical. Hey, he shouted, grabbing her arm. You don't get to quit now. She opened her eyes slowly. I told you to launch. You know I don't listen well. With both hands, he braced himself and pulled the metal beam back just enough for her to slide free. Her entire right side was slick with blood, blue, glowing faintly, pulsing like it had a heartbeat of its own. Jason gritted his teeth and wrapped her arm around his shoulders. Can you move? She nodded. Barely. They limped toward the backup pod, Jason half dragging, half carrying her. The floor was vibrating now, shaking beneath them as the ship's stabilizers gave out. From behind, the launch bay exploded, flames and debris swallowing the other pods. They had 10 seconds. They fell into the second pod. Jason hit the ejection panel. Nothing. Then, manual override engaged, launching Pod 17C. The floor dropped. The scream of the launch bay vanished in an instant as the pod rocketed into space, spinning violently before stabilizing. Through the viewport, Jason watched the Nova Reach rupture. A silent bloom of fire spread through the black, swallowing it whole. Then everything was quiet, except the sound of Phyrexia gasping beside him. Jason turned. Her eyes were unfocused now. Her body slumped against the seat, heat still rolling off her, but colder now. Wrong. Fading. No, no, no. Stay with me, he said, hands moving across her armor, trying to find the wound again. You're not dying. You're not. She coughed. Blue blood bubbled at the corner of her mouth. I failed, she whispered. Bullshit, Jason growled. You fought through the surge. You held back the rage. You chose. That wasn't failure. Her hand reached for his. Weak, trembling. No thoraxi has ever bonded through restraint. Through choice. They'll never believe it. Then we'll show them, he said. You and me. But her eyes were closing. Phyrexia, his voice cracked. Don't leave me now. Please. Her lips moved again. Faint. You smell good. Jason choked on a laugh, still flirting while bleeding out. That's very you. He pressed his forehead to hers. Stay with me. We're not done. He didn't know how long he sat like that, holding her, whispering to her, refusing to let the quiet win. The stars outside drifted. The pod kept floating. And then, a soft chime. Vital scan detected. Passenger 1, stabilized. Passenger 2, critical, but responsive. Jason exhaled, his whole body trembling with relief. He looked at her. Her chest still rose and fell, weak, but real. He kissed her forehead. That's it. You made it. Her hand twitched. Her fingers brushed his jaw. We made it, she murmured. Then sleep took her, deep and healing, not fading. Jason sat back in the seat, cradling her hand. And in that silence, as stars crawled past and the wreckage of their prison shrank behind them, he whispered, whatever's next, I'll face it with you. The escape pod drifted for 13 hours before the beacon was picked up. Jason had barely moved from Threxia's side. He'd sealed the wound in her side with a medfoam canister, rigged the pod's internal systems to keep her body temperature steady, and stayed awake the entire time. Half from fear, half from something he hadn't yet dared to name. The pickup wasn't military. It wasn't government. It was something else. The vessel that approached them bore no nation's flag, no corporation logo. It was matte black, sleek and silent, its lights minimal. Not a rescue ship, more like a ghost. Jason stepped in front of Threxia as the pod hatch opened, despite knowing full well he was unarmed. The boarding figure was humanoid. Female, pale silver skin, white robes. Her eyes glowed amber. She raised one hand in a gesture of peace. You summoned the coordinates of a Thraxi sanctuary beacon. Jason frowned. We didn't summon anything. She looked past him, to Threxia, unconscious but breathing. She did. Jason didn't argue. He helped them lift her gently onto the stretcher. The alien woman guided them onto the sanctuary vessel without questions, without demands. Inside, the ship was quiet, cool but warm in tone, like a temple or a hospital built by poets. In the medical chamber, Jason sat beside Threxia while machines hummed softly and a healing light ran over her skin. She bonded, the silver-skinned woman said. Jason looked at her sharply. No, yes, emotionally, but not physically. The woman smiled gently. Bonding is not always a flesh. Sometimes the soul moves first. He stared at her. You know her. She is Threxia of the Iron Moons. We thought she was dead. Jason rubbed his eyes. She almost was. The woman studied him. You risked everything for her. I didn't think about it, he said. I just couldn't leave her. She nodded slowly. Then she chose well. They gave him a room to rest. He didn't use it. He stayed beside Threxia. Hours passed. Her breathing steadied. Her skin returned to its normal hue. Her hand twitched again, this time not from pain. And finally, her eyes opened. Jason leaned in. Hey. She blinked, then focused on him. Her voice was dry. You didn't launch, did you? He smiled. You really thought I would? I hope. They sat in silence for a while. Then she said, They brought me home. Jason nodded. Do you trust them? I trust this place, she said. It was built by my people. Not for war. For recovery. Few know it exists. He exhaled. You'll be safe here. Her hand found his. I don't want safe if it means alone. Jason looked at her, really looked, and felt something solid anchor in his chest. You won't be, he said. Not anymore. She sat up slowly, wincing. And you? What will you do now? He thought about that. About returning to Earth. About explaining this to anyone. About going back to a quiet life with quiet people who would never understand the kind of fire he had just walked through. I don't know, he said honestly, but I know I'm not going anywhere without you. Phyrexia didn't smile. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. They walked together through the halls of the sanctuary vessel. She was still healing. He was still bruised. But their pace was in sync now. No more hesitation. No more fear. In one of the quiet chambers, overlooking a field of stars, she turned to him. You still smell good. Jason chuckled. Careful. I might start thinking you're flirting again. She stepped closer. I'm not flirting. Then what are you doing? Choosing. She pressed her forehead lightly to his. Their breath shared, the space between them finally free of war and walls and cages. No surge. No panic. Just choice. Jason stood on the observation deck of the sanctuary vessel, hands resting on the railing, eyes lost in the stars. The stars didn't care what had happened. Ships exploded, people bled, aliens broke, but the stars stayed the same, cold, infinite, silent. And somehow, that comforted him. Behind him, Phyrexia approached, barefoot now. No armor, just a simple robe of pale gray fabric that draped over her tall frame like mist over stone. The wound on her side had healed almost completely, but the memory of it lingered in both of them. She stopped beside him. For a while, they said nothing. Finally, she asked, "Do you regret it?" He didn't turn. "What part?" "Saving me." Jason leaned on the railing. "No, not for a second." She studied him. "Even if it means you can't go back." He gave a small laugh. "Go back to what?" "A ship with no name, a crew that didn't know me, a planet that never noticed when I left." He looked at her then. "I think I started breathing back there, in that cell. Not surviving. Living." She nodded. "The same happened to me." They let the silence settle again. Then Jason spoke. "You know, I spent most of my life avoiding connection. Family, friends, romance. I thought being alone meant being safe." "It does," Phyrexia said. "But safety is not the same as peace." Jason looked up at her. "No, it's not." Phyrexia sat on the edge of the bench behind them, legs folded. Her presence was different now. Still powerful, still immense, but centered, grounded. No more edge of control. No heat spiraling out of balance. She was simply herself. "I used to believe I was only useful when I was dangerous," she said. "That the fire inside me was my only purpose. What you showed me could be shared, and it wouldn't burn." Jason walked over and sat beside her. "You were never just a weapon." Her jaw flexed, holding back emotion. "I had a sister," she said suddenly. "Before I was taken, we trained together, built ships. She told me once that love was a bond of choice, not function. I didn't understand then. I do now." Jason watched her quietly. "Do you think," he asked, "we could ever have something real out there? On some world?" Phyrexia looked at him, steady. "The universe will never understand what we are. Not fully. But that doesn't make it less real." She placed her hand on his chest, right over his heartbeat. "This," she said, "is truth. We don't need permission." He reached up and held her hand there. "I don't know where this goes," he said, "but I'm not afraid of it." Phyrexia nodded. "Then we begin there." They sat in silence again, but this time the silence was warm. Soft footsteps echoed in the distance. The silver-skinned healer from before appeared in the doorway. "You are both cleared for release," she said. "A vessel will take you to the coordinates of your choosing." Jason and Phyrexia exchanged a glance. Freedom. Real freedom. "What would you like to do?" she asked him softly. He thought for a long moment. "I want to go somewhere quiet," he said. "Somewhere nobody's watching. Somewhere we're just people." Phyrexia smiled. "Then I know just the place." Later that evening, under a low-gravity moon with sapphire skies and silver trees, Jason and Phyrexia sat beside a stream, saying nothing. They didn't need to. What they'd lived through wasn't just survival. It wasn't romance born of danger. It was transformation. They weren't who they used to be. And that was the point. 2 years later, the sky above the moon was vast and pale gold, with no visible stars. Only a massive ringed planet hanging low on the horizon like a silent guardian. Jason lay in a woven sling chair outside their hill home, rocking gently in the breeze. The trees here were silver-barked and humming with low resonance, like they were alive. The air smelled like rain before it fell. Phyrexia was crouched by their solar unit, fingers adjusting a cluster of power cells. She wore loose linen over her cobalt blue skin, her black hair tied up in a thick braid. The wound from 2 years ago had healed, but the scar remained, and so did the bond. Jason watched her, half lost in thought, half in awe. She muttered something in Thoraxi under her breath as the panel snapped out of alignment again. "You still make that face every time the circuit kicks back," he said. Phyrexia glanced over her shoulder, brow raised. "You still talk during repairs." "Yeah, but you never tell me to shut up." She smiled, small, rare, real. They'd built everything here by hand. The structure was half buried under the hillside, solar adaptive, climate sealed. A garden ran through the back, filtered water systems hummed underground, and the air was always warm, even in the long night. It wasn't paradise. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Jason sat up in his sling. You ever think about what comes next? Next after what? After this. After settling. After 2 quiet winters. He paused. After everything. Phyrexia stood, brushing dust from her hands. There's a word humans use. Forever. I never believed in it. And now. She stepped closer. Now I don't have to. I just have to stay. Jason reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were callous from work, warm like always. The scar on her palm still pulsed faintly under his touch. He had one just like it on his shoulder, a souvenir from their final run through the collapsing ship. They didn't wear rings. No ceremony. No broadcast to the stars. But they didn't need any of that. Her eyes met his, quiet and steady. You regret any of it? None of it. He exhaled, thumb brushing along her hand. You know, I spent years avoiding people. Connections. I thought keeping my distance kept me safe. It does, she said. But safety isn't peace. No, he said. It's not. They sat in silence for a while. Then a chime echoed from the outer motion field. A soft tone Jason had come to recognize. Visitors. He stood, checking the readings. A small shuttle approaching. Not military, not flagged. Just someone passing through. Phyrexia stepped beside him. Want me to power the shield? Jason shook his head. No, let them land. She raised an eyebrow. You sure? He looked at her. We've got air, food, and water. If they need shelter, we offer it. Her smile returned. Calm, proud, a little dangerous. We've become what no one ever was for us. Jason chuckled. I guess we have. They walked together to the landing ridge. No weapons, no armor. Just 2 people who had earned their peace and decided to share it. A human man, a Thoraxi warrior. Not captives, not fugitives, just a bond that never should have happened and changed everything because it did. If you made it this far, thank you. This story started with tension, danger, and a locked room, and it became something honest, human, alive. If you've ever believed that love can grow in impossible places, that real connection can rise through fire. Leave a comment. Share this with someone who needs to believe in second chances. And hit subscribe, because we've got more stories like this coming, and you don't want to miss them. Thanks for riding this out with us. See you in the next one.